Hi folks, this is Tim Kovar again with our InDesign tutorials. This is the last of our letterhead designs, so you need to try out a few and look for ideas online, but get used to working with the tools in InDesign. Try things out. Okay, so lots and lots of really nice photography stationery. Doesn't have photographs on it, right? Sometimes you want to just go with a nice look, right? Something that you get to decide how you want to do this. All right. So here we have a design that was inspired by something I saw online, and it takes our contact information and places it in a column on the right-hand side of the page, which is a little bit different. Information then goes on the left-hand side, and you can see that the client is going to see their name, whoever you're writing this to. It's going to be prominent on the left-hand side. And it uses this little bit of text here to make a logo for Joe Photographer. Kind of looks like a lowercase p, but this font is, if I click on the right palette here, Bauhaus. So it's a little bit funky. And what I've actually done is those are both uppercase letters, but I've changed the alignment of that letter so that it's just set down below rather than being lined up even the top of each letter form. All right. So if we look at the pieces, the way this comes together, last episode I mentioned the concept of grid design, giving a structure to your page so that it makes the information easy for the viewer to understand. Okay. So if I click on my selection tool, I can say, oh yeah, by making a column for this text on that side of the page, I need to make sure those elements line up. So if I click inside the ruler, I can drag a guideline across there and make sure that those pieces line up. All right. If they were out of alignment, they're just going to look awful messy. Okay. I can also use my selection tool, click on that text box, and I'm going to measure from the top left corner here. Notice that black dot, and the X measurement is at 150. And let me click on this guy, and I see that the X measurement is 150. Scroll down to the one at the bottom, and that top left corner, that is at 150. It's not 151 or 149 and a half, it's at 150. So that those pieces all line up. And it means that when people see them, it creates a nice, even, let's click off that so that it'll deselect, gives that structure that the viewer notices. Okay. Here is another text box where I can put all my content. But a couple of things bug me here. Notice that the text box here is at a Y measurement of 60. That's 60 down from the top of the page. And the text box here is at a Y measurement of 60 down from the top of the page. But notice the edge of my type for client name does not line up with the edge of the type for my logo. So sometimes just lining up the text boxes isn't sufficient. Right? So if I click in my menu bar and I drag my guideline down, as I've done there, it's at a Y measurement of 60. Let's use the magnifying glass tool and zoom in on that a little bit. All right. So what I want to do is now, even though I have the boxes aligned, because of this Bauhaus font and its peculiarity, the way it drops down slightly, I want to line up visually the top of that piece with the top of my client name. Okay. So I select that box, and I can move it manually, click and drag up and down. But when we're trying to get it really close, you can use your arrow keys to skip down in small measurements. If you look at the Y palette, I go from 56.35 to 56.1, 55.85, and visually that's put the top of the J even with the top of client name. So I like that better rather than simply aligning the boxes by number. Okay, but now I think that that J and P lined up exactly like that are too even. So what I want to do is use a thing called baseline shift, okay, which we're going to find in the character palette. Now, InDesign gives you a million different tools for aligning your type, moving your type, changing the size, the font, the alignment, and we'll have to work through a lot of those. But for this one, I'm just going to select that letter individually and say, rather than having those lined up, I'm going to go over here and use some of these effects. Now, this one right here, you roll over it, I can horizontally scale it, which all it does is mathematically stretch that. So I enter a number and I hit return, and it's just changing the numbers of the way that letter form is displayed. Okay, but that's not what I want here. Okay, so you want to go in and you want to try this stuff. What happens if I make it 3 times the size, 3 times the height? All right, so again, you can have fun with these things, experiment with them, but use them sparingly. So that is not a picture of the letter, that is the actual letter, and if I wanted to change that to a T, it keeps the formatting that you've described for it, but it's changing the way it's mathematically displayed. But in this case, I want a P. I want the letter P. Maybe I should say that. I'll scale that back normally. And I'm going to use this one below it, baseline shift. Now, point is the measurement that we use in typography. And if you look in a newspaper, the headlines might be 30 point or 50 point, and the text might be 8, sometimes 10 point. Normal typewriter, if you can remember one of those, was 11 or 12 point. Most of the things you're going to type will be at 10 point. So it's just getting used to that measurement. And in this case, I want to bump it down, and I'm just doing this to the point where I like the way it looks. Okay, and -10 was kind of the way I liked it. All right, now if I back up out of that, and if I click on my view mode and go to preview to hide all those lines, I can say, I kind of like the way that J and P are a little off balance. I got this nice vertical line which keeps that column together, and then there's that horizontal line where client name and the logo line up. All right, so there's another simple layout design. You got to come up with one of your own, look for samples, and try something out. Okay, so this is Tim. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll next move on to making exhibition posters, which is what we want to do, combining your images into an A3 exhibition poster file. Thanks a lot.